So hello, today I'm at St Mary the Virgin Church in Brockstead in Essex, and I'd like to talk to you about the history of the church and the village itself. So Brockstead is a village in Essex. It's 6.8 miles from Bishop Stortford and it's 3 miles from Stansted Airport. The village is surrounded by Essex farmland with tributaries of the River Chelmer and Roding. The elevation is 95 metres above sea level and today's population is 512. St Mary's Church stands on a ridge about 300 metres in length. Brockstead Ridge has been in constant use by many of our ancestors, and in 1979 the Brockstead axe was discovered by a couple renovating their home. The flint axe head is dated to between 4000 and 2500 BC. In fact, the same period as Stonehenge. We also have the Brockstead Rings, found in 2019 by a metal detectorist. It dates to around 300 AD, and that's over 1,700 years ago. Now, soon after, the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great would Christianise the empire itself. Perhaps a small Roman settlement was here due to the Roman brick and tile that's evident in the chancel walls of St Mary itself. Now, the Saxons gave Brockstead its name, Brock's Head, for in Old English a brock was a badger. The Danish Vikings also used this term. Now, Brockstead had two manors, possibly three. It had Chorleyth in the north and Brockstead in the south, and a rectory manor next to St Mary's. Now, in 1066 the overlord of both manors was St Ethelreda, the Abbey of Ely. And it's unusual that both manors were owned by the same abbey. Now, Elys Abbey owned 269 places across England before the conquest and after 191. So Elys Abbey dates back to 672 AD, when St Ethelreda built the abbey there. Now, Ely was a Benedictine community, so it's an interesting connection to Brockstead's past. Chorleyth's manor today is Cherry Hall. Back in 1066, two freemen were thanes here, with Ely acting as overlord. A small settlement it was, 2 villagers, 5 smallholders and 1 slave. There was also 3 plough teams and pigs and cattle roaming the meadows and woodlands here. Now, by 1086, Elys Abbey would lose Chorleyth's manor. Richard, son of Count Gilbert, would now be the lord of the Normans. Now, Udo, the steward, would be the tenant-in-chief here, Udo would be the royal steward to William the Conqueror himself. He would go on to serve William's son and Henry I of England. And I read that a small hamlet existed here, actually called Choref. Now we move on to the second manor. Brockhel's Vot today is Broxted Hall. Now Brockhel's Vot in 1086 would share its lordship with Udo the Stewart, a much bigger and nicer manor with 16 villagers, 5 smallholders and 5 slaves, and an impressive 6 plough teams, Meadows, Woodlands and 250 pigs would roam, this time of year being fattened up with the acorns. And I read that they also had 2 beehives, which again showed wealth. Now by 1210 Elys Abbey would lose its lordship here, and this is where the Clare family appears. Now Richard de Clare, Earl of Clare, would become Lord of Broxted. Richard was a powerful Anglo-Norman nobleman, incredibly wealthy, and he would part build Thaxted's church, said to be the finest in all of Essex. For good measure, Richard would become the Baron against King John of 1215. He would lead the negotiations for the Magna Carta itself. Now the Clares would hold Broxted Manor until 1359. The Bourchier family would take over the mantle, and the Bourchiers, serving the kings in politics and battle, had an immense authority across Essex, and for the next 200 years Broxted would be their home. Now by now we're in 1558. It's now known as Broxted Hall, as it is today. William Parr would be the lord here. Now William himself would become first Earl of Essex and brother of Catherine Parr. Now Catherine also would be Henry VIII's last wife. An old English nursery rhyme goes like such to remember his 6 wives. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. We move on to Elizabeth I. It's 1590, and Queen Bess, as she was known at the time, owned Broxted's Manor. I did also read that Elizabeth herself liked Essex very much. Now I did mention a third possible manor. Well, the rectory itself was its location. All the way back to 1151, the manor house here was given to the Hospital of St John of Jerusalem. The owners were Allred de Bandeville and his wife Sibelia. Now it turns out that Allred and Sibelia had also given lands to the monks of Lewis, and it was witnessed by King Stephen himself. For they had included Roger Pijot's land in the deal. They asked for the souls of the noble house of Clare and for their own souls to be prayed for. Now the Knights of St John became the most formidable military order in the Holy Land, along with the Knights Templar. Their mission was to provide care for the sick, poor and injured pilgrims en route to the Holy Land. Now the hospital itself in Jerusalem would care for anyone without distinction or race or faith. They would become known as the Knights Hospitaliers. And by 1151 the Second Crusade had taken place. Now we jump forward to the 14th century, the Broxted would live through the Great Famine and the Great Plague of 1349. Half of all the population and cattle had perished here, and taxes had risen and the population were very unsettled. Now by 1381 the Presidents Revolt was well underway. Rebels from Thaxted, Saffron Walden and Wilbish made their way down to Broxted. And by now a large force would have moved onto the town called Ware and meet at Mile End in London on the 13th of June 1381. Now it's not known how many men left with the rebels from Broxted, but they undoubtedly did. Soon after the rebel leader Wat Tyler was killed in London, the Essex men would have fled back to hamlets like Broxted, with the King's men in hot pursuit. And from this time Broxted comprises a number of scattered communities, each ending with the word end. Now today we have Chapel End, Brick End, Church End, Moor End and Woods Gate End, and a very noisy aeroplane from Stansted. Now we move on to the Prince of Wales pub, serves the community of Broxted. I read that in 2015 the landlord here received a letter from British Gas for a gas bill. The only problem is it was addressed to His Royal Highness Prince Charles, and the pub was not connected to the gas mains. I thought it was quite funny. Now the Prince of Wales pub name was popular during Victorian times when Prince Albert was the longest serving holder. But we can go back to Edward the Black Prince of 1330, who would have 3 plumes of ostrich feathers in his coat of arms. Now Stansted Airport, literally only miles away from Broxted, is part of everyday life here. I can only imagine that the recent lockdowns from the coronavirus gave the villagers some much reduced air traffic and peace and quiet. Now Stansted Airport itself has been looking to expand the actual airport, which would affect this village in a massive way. An action group actually titled Vanishing Villages and Stop Stansted Expansion is currently challenging the proposed changes. Now we look at St Mary the Virgin's Church in Broxted. It's built in flint and pebble rubble off local fields. It's got bricks and tiles of the Roman era. Dressings are clunch and brick. Now clunch is a hard type of chalk. It's a beautiful time of year now. We're in autumn, and as you can see the leaves are golden and falling. Like a russet brown. We'll go around to the south side. You can see there's quite a few yew trees in this church. We should start with the south porch itself. So the south porch was rebuilt in 1876 when Reverend Dennis Young was the vicar here. Now in 1876 Queen Victoria is declared Empress of India. Controversy surrounds King Charles III's coronation crown, as India wants the Koh-i-Noor diamondback that rests in the crown. Now the doors and windows in this porch were restored in memory of two local ladies who died during the World War II period. Now we shall go inside. Oh, there you go, you see. Now the roof beams, which we can see there, are 16th century. Now the door surround itself is late 14th century and in remarkable good condition. You can see Victorians have replaced a section here, but apart from that, remarkable condition. Now we should go in. Now we should pan around, get a view of the access, the south door. Now the nave itself is 53 feet by 20 feet. It's built in the late 14th century, but it was rebuilt to fit the chancel. It's likely that this nave rests on foundations of previous naves. Now if we pan around, you can see that there are 3 bays, and these are from the 15th century. And we can look up the top, we've got some carvings. If we pan down, we've got a very interesting niche in the wall. Now starting at the top, it's got a defaced cinquefoiled ogee canopy, and then it's got a vaulted soffit with roses and flowers. Just about make out the rose in the middle. And Mary with child. We follow it down. This is 15th century, by the way. And at the base, these are described as 2 figures of angels, 15th century. Now we're looking at the pews, which were replaced in 1876. Now the original Georgian box pews were removed, and I wonder where they ended up. Now up against the south wall we have the World War I memorial, and this includes the brave lads from nearby Chickney hamlet. Now they never returned from Europe. Now Chickney's church is no longer a practicing church, but it's still open and well worth a visit. I can highly recommend it. Now also on the south wall we have a memorial window dedicated to Reverend A. Mason. Now A. Mason served here for 23 years from 1846. Now we shall make our way over to the Norfile. Now the Norfile measures 42 feet by 14 feet and it's early 15th century. Now the windows themselves were restored during the Victorian period. And if we look, there is a community library here in the Norfile itself. A good selection of books. We can make out another Victorian period window in the west wall. These are often overlooked, I'm afraid, but they're great detail. Now, in the Norfile, the east window, the altar and the furniture was commissioned by church warden Arnold Willis to celebrate his silver wedding with his wife in 1961. Arnold was church warden here for 33 years. Let's have a closer look. The carving of Broxted itself, on the oak panel with a windmill there. Now if we look above, not sure what you actually call this. If I look on the floor, you can see the light that's cast from the stained glass windows. And we can see the kneelers that are attached or placed at the back of the pews. These are all handmade for various occasions. And I dare say there'll be some across the country made for the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Now I want to look at this pew, this pulpit here. Now we're looking at a most beautiful octagonal pulpit. It's made of English oak and it's got 6 sides carved in foliated ornamentation, carved in the early 17th century. Now just to think that this would be around the same time that Essex sent its pilgrims aboard the Mayflower ship to colonise Massachusetts, America. Let's have a look. So we got these small steps here. You can see the individual panels. This is over 400 years old. And you can see the heavy wear and the iron straps, the original oak. Wow. This would be the view. The preacher has, or the Reverend. Here we have a Bible holder or rester, I don't know what it's called, but it's most unusual because it's double-sided. It's got something here and it looks like you can turn it. Maybe you can hold 2 Bibles or 2 books, perhaps. There's another bracket there. Now we're looking at the Chantcell, which measures 39 feet by 20 feet. It's built in 1220. All of the original detail survives. Now the original lancet windows are intact. You get a feel of the defensive design. It's very unusual to find a full set of an original stone windows. Now in 1220 the foundation stone of Salisbury's Cathedral was laid. The Crusaders, led by the Knights Hospitallers, venture into Egypt and the Grand Master is captured. The Crusaders travel on to Cyprus, where they would lose most of their ships. Meanwhile, Genghis Khan and 100,000 Mongols march across the deserts for war. This memorial window is in memory of the Reverend Pryden's wife. Now if we pan around, we've got another nice lancet window here. Now we should pan around. I believe all the roofs have been repaired or replaced in the renovation, Victorian period. Now just inside the chancel we have the organ. Now we're looking at a Bryceon and Co. London organ made by Henry Bryceon, started building organs in London in 1796. Now, by 1881, he employed 67 men and 7 boys. Their machinery was steam-powered. We'll go up and have a look. I love the way the light casts, or the windows cast light onto the walls. Now we should make our way to the belfry. So St Mary the Virgin Church is open more or less every day for public, so please come and have a look for yourself. So the belfries, 4 massive oak posts support the belfry above, completely rebuilt in 1876. Would like to see what the original belfry looked like. Now on the 31st of January 1993, these two windows had been designed and installed, called the Captivity and Freedom windows, to remember the captivity and freedom of the Beirut hostages. This all began in 1986 when Brockstead residents watched on the news a British journalist, John McCarthy, had been kidnapped in Beirut. Thankfully, the hostages were released, including the journalist John himself, who ended up visiting this church on numerous occasions. Now, the artist himself is John Clark, and we'll start with the Captivity window. Now, if we look, the hands are clasped in prayer, and yellow ribbons around branches. Now, yellow ribbons were used during the Vietnam War in America. Wives would tie a yellow ribbon around a tree outside their home as a sign of hope of a return. That's my understanding. So now we pan around to the Freedom window. I hope I've got this the right way round, because they've both got yellow ribbons. Now, the light depicts publicity experienced by the hostages on their release. The Dove of Peace represents John McCarthy with a letter for the United Nations. Praying of hands is for prayer. The phoenix at the top symbolises resurrection. So now we shall leave this old church. I'd just like to talk to you about the bells a little bit. So we have various bells. We have a Miles Gray of 1632. Now this bell was cast by Miles Gray II. He lived in nearby Saffron Walden, and when he cast bells with his father, also called Miles Gray. Now 10 years after this bell was cast, he had stopped casting bells due to the Civil War. Miles II would die in 1666, most likely of the Great Plague. We have a James Bartlett of 1688. Now, James came from a long line of bell founders in the famous Whitechapel foundry in London. He would become a liveryman in 1677 of the bell founders. He was entitled to wear the ancient Guild of Clothes as a freeman of the City of London. Now, James would be the last Bartlett to cast bells. His bells replaced many lost in the Great Fire of London itself and can be found in today's Christopher Wren's churches throughout London. Just notice the weather vane on the top. So if we start on the nave itself, looks like Elizabethan period brickwork, possibly. And fine memorial here. It's an interesting place to put it. Now then, if we look in the walls, we straight away we can see Roman brick. It's been challenging filming because I've had to film in between the planes, so I can imagine people here used to it, but it must be annoying. You can see an extension there of some sort. Now this is where we've got a lot of Roman brick. So there must have been a villa or a building of some sort, because there's a large amount. You can imagine that most of it would be buried in the wall as well. Look at this. Brick and tile. You can actually see where it's fired incorrectly and given it a black colour. Wow. All the way along. Must be a large building. I guess the Normans knocked it down. So here we have the lancet windows. So now this is the Norfile itself. Yeah, you can see this has been very highly finished in Victorian period. And making our way round. Blocked up doorway. I don't know if you can make that out. Huge amount of insects. Huge amount of flint off the fields. Looks like a monk. Wow. So, St Mary the Virgin's Church is an active church in the community, and they carry out baptisms, weddings and funerals. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.